So the Indiana Jones series is one that I remember loving as a kid, but I recently realized that I had only ever actually saw most of them only once, and I actually hadn't seen the one that everyone deemed to be the worst one. So with Dial of Destiny finally hitting theaters, I decided to finally give them a much needed rewatch. And yeah, these movies are still a total blast. And to be honest, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull really wasn't as bad as the past decade or so has told me it was. So I was full-blown adventure mode, ready to hopefully enjoy this new one. Sure, early stuff out of cans wasn't great, and obviously missing two of the figures that made the original series so iconic was some cause for concern. But could the movie overcome all these hurdles and deliver a good time? It doesn't feel good to report this, but sad to say, not only was Dial of Destiny disappointing, but Dial of Destiny, in my opinion, is a pretty bad movie. And one that is most definitely the worst of the entire series. And yes, that does mean it is worse than Crystal Skull. Argue with me all you want, I'm simply going off of how I felt watching those two movies back to back. And yeah, this is definitely the weaker one, and the one that made me feel a lot worse. To be 100% honest, I kind of think binging all of the movies doomed this one from the very start. After watching all of them, it reminded me how much craft and effort went into each one, and seeing them made me sad. Sad to the fact that movies like the original trilogy just don't get made anymore. Dial of Destiny is a weightless movie. Nothing leaves any kind of impact. There's no grit or sense of anything to grab onto. Even if you look past the overabundance of digital effects, even the basics of Indy punching someone or whipping anything, you feel like there's no weight to any of it. You don't feel anything from watching it. There was never a point in this movie where I felt like I was watching an actual Indiana Jones film. It felt very much more like a National Treasure film, or one of the countless Indiana Jones knockoffs that you got in the early wake of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I have to say that even when Indiana Jones movies aren't at their best, the characters usually are able to make up for it, but here, Dial of Destiny gives us a massive pile of nothing human characters to work with. Sadly, played by actors I really like. I know most of the targets are going to be placed at Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, and while I don't think she's the most well-written character, and I do think she does get grating at times, I don't blame that at all on the actor, because I have seen Fleabag and other things that she's in, and she's terrific in them, and have played parts very similar to this. I think she gets let down by a really mediocre script, and that same goes for everyone else in the movie, in particular Mads Mikkelsen and Boyd Holbrook, who are giving nothing to work with as the movie's main villains, and it's an Indiana Jones movies. The villains are some of the most iconic characters from this series. Also, for some reason, Antonio Banderas is in this movie, and for the life of me, I can't explain why. It's literally the most nothing part ever. Like, it's truly comical how little of a part they give this actor, who would be great in one of these movies if they actually gave him something to do. But let's talk about Harrison Ford, the man who is synonymous with this character and the one that has been pretty universally praised for this movie. And I'm sorry to say that even he really isn't doing anything for me here. It sucks that this is now the third time we've gotten a quote-unquote proper ending for this character. Last Crusade is obviously the best one, but Crystal Skull was kind of a nice one too, but this one is just kind of sad, and I get the point of the movie is Indy is in those sad twilight years of his life, but there's no moment where he triumphantly comes to terms with some of the things that he's been going through, or gets a really genuine happy ending. It's just kind of a somber note to end such a iconic character on. Most of the movie is him taking a backseat to everything else going on. Heck, the entire final act, he's basically out of commission for the majority of it.
This is intolerable!
Speaking of the third act, let's get into it. So this movie has time travel. It shouldn't really be shocking to anyone since the trailer made it pretty clear, and the movie very quickly asserts that that's where we're going with this, and it's going to be doing it the whole time. I was pretty nervous going in knowing that time travel was going to be a factor, but then again, the Indiana Jones series has had a lot of silly moments and have jumped the shark a few times beforehand, obviously Crystal Skull, but this movie really handles this concept in the worst way possible. The second I saw Indiana Jones flying in a Nazi plane over ancient Greece and standing alongside Trojan soldiers and speaking with Archimedes, yeah, it was too damn silly, and yes, the aliens in Crystal Skull are pretty silly too, but at least it's brief, and at least Indiana Jones isn't talking to them or going to their homeworld. Here though, we're spending the entire final 15 minutes in this ridiculous setting, and it's just a point of no return for this franchise. I also want to talk about the opening of the movie. I couldn't think of a natural place to fit it in, but I really want to touch on it quick. So the opening 15 minutes of the movie is meant to be a classic Indiana Jones adventure with a de-aged Harrison Ford. And while this could work on paper, and it does have some fun moments very reminiscent of the original trilogy, the de-aging effect is really wonky at times, and it just has that gross uncanny valley look that just took me out of it completely. And they also didn't do anything with Harrison Ford's voice, so hearing an 80-year-old's voice coming out of a 40-year-old body was also incredibly distracting. And it just looked wrong. It looked wrong. Everything about this movie just feels wrong. And that's the best way to describe it overall. It's just really bad, but also just really sad to see that this is how the series goes out on, and it's done in the laziest way possible in my opinion. It wastes a really stacked cast and a director who's done stories like this well in the past and tries so hard to be like its predecessors while missing everything that made them great to begin with. It's unfortunate that the series ends on such a sour note, but hey, maybe people will now agree that when a series is this old,
That belongs in a museum. So do you.